It was right after Christmas. It started out like any other day. I went to work, and the kids knew that at 9 o'clock they had to be in Veneta at my work. We were going to stop and get their dad at his work and go to the dentist. About 8:40 in the morning, my son calls me and says, "Mom, the Freeman's home was on fire."
Lorraine's daughter, Laura Bible, spent the previous night at the Freeman's house, celebrating her friend Ashley Freeman's 16th birthday.
On the morning of December 30th, a local resident who was driving to work observed the fire at the Freeman's residence. And this person stopped between 5:30 and 6 a.m. and actually called in the fire with the Welch Volunteer Fire Department.
One of the county deputies walked into the place I worked and said, "Lorraine, I need to talk to you." So we go back to the office, and his first words were, "Do you know Ashley Freeman?" I said, "Yes, she's my daughter's best friend. In fact, Laura stayed again last night with the Freemans. But their house caught on fire, and my son's on his way there to help." I could just tell by his demeanor that something was wrong. He said, "Lorraine, the house is totally gone." I called my husband. He came from work, and we drove to the Freemans.
The fire was extremely volatile. I mean, most everything had just collapsed, and it was just ashes and burnt debris.
He walked me up there and he showed me the body that was laying across the bed that was badly burnt. Yeah, it was very difficult to recognize. They thought it was female. They thought it was Kathy. That was the first time for me to see a charred human body. And the visual of it and the odor of it stays with you, has stayed with me for 20 years now.
When I saw the county coroner when she come over, I asked her, because I knew her personally, I said, "Is that Kathy?" And she said, "I can't tell you 100%, but I know that the woman has a ring on her left hand and she has bore children." I said, "That's Kathy." So where are Danny? Where are the two girls? By 4:30, it's starting to get dark. By 5 o'clock, it is pitch black, cold. The investigators say they're 100% sure there's nothing else here. So at 5 o'clock, they released the Freeman's house scene over to the families.
The deadly house fire is big news in this small town. Rumors spread and tips pour in. One tipster claims they saw Danny Freeman driving with Laura and Ashley in the car.
I knew Kathy more than I knew Danny. Kathy was just a mom, helped raising her two kids and doing the best she could. Danny was like all the dads. He went off to work, but there was things about him I wish I'd known back then. He had a black powder gun go off in his face, and he had to have some metal plates put in. And due to that, sometimes when he would get mad, he would go too far.
They made a discovery very quickly. They saw the remains and realized this is Danny Freeman. Immediately, they recontacted law enforcement and came back out to look at the scene again.
Your heart sinks into your stomach. It's something that you don't want to believe, but it's right there in front of you. You know you have to. And then your mind immediately has to go to the girls. We got to find the girls. It's a really bad feeling to see Danny laying there and then not knowing where his daughter's at and her friend.
I found Laura's purse. She'd gotten her Christmas money, which she took with her because she was going to take Ashley and buy whatever Ashley wanted for her birthday.
Remains were taken to the medical examiner's office. They determined that Danny and Kathy had received a wound to the back of the head that was consistent with the shotgun blast, and actually recovered some shotgun pellets. Now we've got a whole new mystery. What happened here? How come we're not finding Laura and Ashley? Where are they?
I knew there's no way. With her car still there and her purse in the house, Laura didn't leave there willingly.
Very strong piece of evidence surfaced. An insurance card was found at the scene.
They asked me if I knew the name that was on the card, and I told them no, I did not recognize that at all.
The owner of the vehicle lived in Chetopa. They interviewed her on January 3rd, and she said, "I don't know why my insurance card was found at the scene."
The woman tells investigators she's not the only person who uses that car. Her boyfriend, Phil Welch, drives it too.
So me and Gary actually got together and decided that we were going to work the case together. We got approval on that.
Stansel and Ferrari re-interview witnesses from the initial investigation, and one name comes up over and over.
So there was an individual by the name of Phil Welch.
Initially, when I started reading through that case file, there was a talk about an insurance card that was located at the scene. And so this insurance card had a female's name on it. She was interviewed early on, and she had talked about her boyfriend, which was Phil Welch, did know the Freemans, and he often drove her car.
The case file shows that detectives had questioned Welch after that insurance card was found.
Whenever they did talk to Phil Welch, he had brought up the name of David Pennington, talked about David being a friend of his, talked about David cooking meth, David was a kingpin, and then Ronnie Busick's name's coming up. And these three ran together. They were from the Chetopa area, and they were known to smoke meth, they were known to make meth, they were known to sell meth.
There were some reports in regards to those people. There are individuals that had actually been interviewed that said these people were involved.
For some reason, though, it seems no one followed up on those leads.
My niece, Lisa, had a friend say, "Hey, social media is up and running now. You guys need to have the website so that people can send you tips." So she helped my niece get the website up and running, and that's when we started getting tips.
We received a tip from someone who knew someone who heard something. We were told that there were pictures of the girls bound and gagged, Polaroids of them that had been taken, that they were being held against their will, and other things had happened.
Rumor had it there was pictures of them and this was done to them. You don't really focus on that part, because if you do, then you'll stop.
To find out whether these pictures exist, Stansel tracks down one of David Pennington's ex-girlfriends, who was identified by the tipster.
I get information about a woman who actually lived with David Pennington and found out where she lived and went to interview her. I said, "Do you ever hear them talk about anything about these missing girls?" And she said, "Yes. I overheard them talking about their involvement with the missing girls, and that they actually insinuated that they had molested them." A few months later, I interviewed Phil Welch's second girlfriend at the time.
And when we asked about details of these pictures, they were without a doubt believed that it was Laura and Ashley. They said that the girls in the pictures, they were bound, they were gagged. One of our witnesses was able to tell us that she saw a bedspread that she knew because she dated Phil. She was able to tell us then, without a doubt, that that was Phil's house where she saw the girls. So we start looking at the three of them. We find out that Phil Welch is already deceased. David Pennington is deceased. But Ronnie Busick, we found out that he was still alive. People told us that he was pure evil, that he was the devil. There was people that were just terrified of him.
Stansel and Ferrari head to a Kansas jail to interview Ronnie Busick, who's incarcerated on a separate charge. Busick might be their last hope of finally solving this case.
You know, kind of just kept it casual at first. Do you know a guy by the name of Phil Welch?
That name sounds familiar.
And then the more that we talked to him, then it was, yeah, I used to hang out with them. I used to cook meth with them.
During several interviews, Busick gives investigators his version of what happened on that frigid December night in 1999.
So from everything that we can understand, David, Phil, and Ronnie went out there to Danny and Kathy's house. Danny is ultimately shot during this, and then Kathy is shot. The girls end up escaping out of another door and run to the back of the house, and they're hiding. Once the suspects see them, the suspects ended up catching them. They were taken to Phil Welch's house in Pitcher, Oklahoma, and ended up being kept there for 2 weeks, where they were tortured, they were drugged, and then ultimately killed and disposed of.
Busick claims he stayed in the car, while Welch and Pennington went inside the house. Finally, with the trial looming, Ronnie Busick pleads guilty to his part in these awful crimes. Prosecutors agree to drop the original charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping if Busick will agree to help find the girls. On August 31st, 2020, a judge sentences Ronnie Busick to 10 years in prison and 5 years of probation for accessory to murder. Neither Laura Bible or Ashley Freeman have been found. The search for them goes on.
She was more than just a girl that was abducted, murdered, tortured. She was more than that.